A reading from Daniel 3, verses 1 and 8 through 30. King Nebuchadnezzar made a golden statue whose height was 60 cubits and whose width was 6 cubits. He set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Accordingly, at this time, certain Chaldeans came forward and denounced the Jews. They said to King Nebuchadnezzar, "O king, live forever. You, O king, have made a decree that everyone who hears the sound of horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, drum, and entire musical ensemble shall fall down and worship the golden statue. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be thrown into a furnace of blazing fire. There are certain Jews whom you have appointed over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These pay no heed to you, O king. They do not serve your gods, and they do not worship the golden statue that you have set up." Then Nebuchadnezzar was furious, and he had a furious rage that commanded that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought in. So they brought those men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods, and you do not worship the golden statue that I have set up? Now, if you are ready, when you hear the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, drum, and entire musical ensemble, to fall down and worship the statue that I have made, well and good. But if you do not worship, you shall immediately be thrown into the furnace of blazing fire. And who is the God that will deliver you out of my hands?" Well, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to present a defense to you in this matter. If our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the furnace of blazing fire and out of your hand, O king, let him deliver us. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods, and we will not worship the golden statue that you have set up." Then Nebuchadnezzar was so filled with rage against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that his face was distorted. He ordered the furnace heated up 7 times more than was customary, and ordered some of the strongest guards in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and to throw them into the furnace of blazing fire. So the men were bound, still wearing their tunics, their trousers, their hats, and their other garments, and they were thrown into the furnace of blazing fire. Because the king's command was urgent, and the furnace was so overheated, the raging flames killed the men who lifted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But the 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down, bound into the furnace of blazing fire. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished and rose up quickly. He said to his counselors, "Was it not 3 men that we threw into the fire? But I see 4 men, unbound, walking in the middle of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the 4th has the appearance of gods." Nebuchadnezzar then approached the door of the furnace of blazing fire and said, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here." So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire. And the satraps, the prefects, the governors, and the king's counselors gathered together and saw that the fire had not had any power over the bodies of those men. The hair of their heads was not singed. Their tunics were not harmed, and not even the smell of fire came from them. Nebuchadnezzar said, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him." They disobeyed the king's command and yielded up their bodies rather than service and worship any god except their own God. Therefore I make a decree: any people, nation, or language that utters blasphemy against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn limb from limb, and their houses laid in ruins. For there is no other God who is able to deliver in this way. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. Here ends our reading. Welcome to this midweek Lenten sermon. My name is Pastor Gina Marie Koeberl, and I am the pastor at Danebod Lutheran Church in Tyler, Minnesota. I have some questions for you. Have you ever been burned in life? Ever felt burned out? Ever been under the fire of attacks? When I think of the word fire, our theme for this midweek Lenten worship year, I remember one of those favorite Bible verses, the one from Isaiah 43. When you walk through fire, you shall not be burned, nor shall the flame scorch you. The Hebrew word for fire can mean a literal or figurative fire. Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines fire as intense verbal attack or criticism, a rapidly delivered series under attack. In Hebrew, the word yalak means walk or be weak. Attacks weaken us, they drain us. The Hebrew word for scorch, abar, means consumed by fire or eating. How many times have attacks in life eaten you up inside? Verbal, emotional, physical abuse, false accusations, rumors spread that are ugly and hurtful. These things may not leave a mark or the smell of fire upon us. They do scorch our hearts. They leave blisters on our souls. When we are weak and acknowledge our weakness, God draws near. Emmanuel, God with us. That is the message of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. God is with us. For indeed, when you walk through the fire or the fires of oppression, you shall not be burned, nor shall the flame scorch you. Now let's talk a little about the book of Daniel to understand a little more about this Emmanuel. The book of Daniel is set during the Babylonian exile. This took place around 586 to 538 BCE. And during this period, what happened is the Egyptians had attempted to invade Babylon. And they had done this with the support of the Israelite king. Now there was a young prince named Nebuchadnezzar. And he defeated the Egyptians. But not only that, he pushed them all the way down to the Sinai Peninsula. And along the way, he conquered the city of Jerusalem. Israel, the northern kingdom, had been conquered by the Assyrians in 722 BCE. Judah, the southern kingdom, was the only one that stood and now was conquered. And so the reign of Israel's kings ended forever. The Babylonians rounded up the best and the brightest of all of Israel, 3 of whom are our main characters today. And they marched them out of Jerusalem to live in exile in Babylon. However, our story actually was not written during the period of the Babylonian exile. It was written during a period of Greek colonization, like 400 years later. The book of Daniel isn't really interested in presenting a historically accurate account of the Babylonian exile. For instance, the Babylonians did not actually force their religion on others. However, there was a Greek overlord at the time of Daniel's composition that was forcing a religious, oppressive regime. So this is around 167 to 164 BCE. So this book is set to be inspirational, to inspire leaps of faith in the midst of hopelessness to the people who are hearing it. Daniel tells the story of 4 teenagers: Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, who were deported from their country to Babylon. And they were trained in the Babylonian arts, literature, and culture. Their names were changed to the new language. And by changing their names, this is significant because their original names in Hebrew honored God. But their new names now honored the gods of the new land. The goal in all of this was to indoctrinate these natives of the culture and to indoctrinate them with this culture of the colonizing country. Kind of parallels a lot of what was done in America, India, and Africa by the colonizing of Europeans. It is remarkable how history does repeat itself again and again. Now these 4 youth, despite all the efforts to teach them how to blend in, they still stood out, and they stood out together. They came to live in the king's palace, and they were tested. Now, the first test was whether they would eat unclean food. They were not supposed to eat meat that was sacrificed to an idol. So instead of eating the choicest meats, they kept a vegetarian diet. Well, it turns out that they were the healthiest of anyone in the court. And so the king kept them around and let them follow Jewish dietary laws. Then Nebuchadnezzar started having troubling dreams that he didn't understand, nor could any of his wise men. And so he ordered all the brightest and best to be executed. This included our 4 young men. So Daniel asked what this was about and learns that it's about the king's dream. So he asks to meet with the king, and he promises that he can interpret the dream. He gets an audience with the king and tells his 3 friends to pray to God because he needs God's spirit to interpret the dream. And God is with Daniel, and he interprets the king's dream, and all the wise men are saved. And Daniel gets a big promotion along with his 3 friends whose names have now been changed to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And shortly after the king's dream, he's inspired to build a large statue to be worshipped. And that brings us to today's story. Faced with attack, these three men trust beyond what they see, what they know, what they feel. And they trust that God is with them, Emmanuel, even into the fire. They follow their conviction into a future with no assurances. They said, if our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the furnace of blazing fire and out of your hand, O king, let him deliver us. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods and we will not worship the golden statue that you have set up. If not. If not is a very real possibility. If these three had known in advance that they would be spared from the fiery furnace, they would be following a mere formula. The results would be in their control. Professor Richard Nisey writes in Working Preacher Commentary 2011, God is not a vending machine into which we insert our faithfulness and out comes the reward we are seeking. In the midst of persecution, the persecuted don't have a formula. These three trust God, but do not presume upon God. Trusting God ought not to be reduced to a formula for success and prosperity. The latter, however, is a very tempting move to make with this chapter and chapter 6 as well. Tempting to turn this text into a formula of deliverance and promotion. But that would be to sidestep the end of the book, where clearly the faithfulness and the faithful are martyred. So the theme, God can deliver, moves at this moment to only God can deliver. There's no secret formula. The Bible is filled with casts of characters who struggle and fail and doubt and stumble. People of faith. People of faith can experience hopelessness, a loss of identity, and suffering. Faith does not keep the fires from being built. Faith does not have a magic formula that guarantees that God will give you what you want or what you need and when you demand it. Faith does allow us to leap through the flames. Faith is our hope. And Emmanuel, God with us, is our promise. It is Emmanuel who stands in the flames with us and leads us through. For when you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, nor shall the flames scorch you. And when the things that do not leave a mark or smell of fire, yet scorch your heart and leave blisters on your soul happen, I invite you to focus on Emmanuel. Emmanuel is the name that we speak a lot during Advent and Christmas. From the manger to the cross, Jesus had to go the way of his life, and the ultimate consequence of God with us, of God incarnate, God as one of us, is Emmanuel, is the passion and death of the cross. But why? Because Jesus came to give us life, life eternal. And that means facing death, destroying death, overcoming death, for all of us. Easter is nothing without Good Friday, and Good Friday is nothing without Easter. Without Easter, the cross is simply a story of defeat. And like the scorched heart and blistered soul that you experience, we have more. We have a promise. The story of Emmanuel. And this story goes from the manger to the cross to an open grave. From birth to death to resurrection to everlasting life. It passes through the fiery furnace, now and again, with Emmanuel. It's a healing of the heart and soul. It's a new beginning and a strengthened spirit. It is resilience beyond the fiery furnace of trauma. Faith in the fire is not a formula. Faith in the fire contains an if and an if not risk. Faith gives us the courage to leap. Emmanuel is the promise we will resiliently pass through. And thanks be to God that even in the fire, we do not walk alone. For when you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, nor shall the flame scorch you.